Eruvin Daf Chav Ches. Today's email comes to us from Yehuda Nelson, who I just found out today after I read the email in the morning that he used to be a Talmud of my brother, Rebbe Fall from Far Rockaway. He says, every time I click to go play your full shir, my anxiety spikes. 45 minutes is entirely too long for me, but without fail, my tune changes just a couple of minutes in. And then he says, Yeshurim have this amazing way of captivating me. And he wants to say, since I speak so much about Ocean Parkway and Rosh Hashanah, here's a picture of Ocean Parkway. Thank you for keeping me close to Torah. Yehuda Nelson, Alei V'Hatzlach. There's a general rule in the Torah that if you eat any sheretz, you get 2 lavim, which equals 2 times malchus. However, in addition to that, depends what kind of sheretz it is. If it's a crawling creature on the ground, like an ant, you get an additional 3 lavim, 3 malchus, for a total of 5. If it's something like a hornet, which crawls on the ground but also flies, in addition to the 5, you get 1 more for a total of 6. An aquatic sheretz, you get the 2 for general sheretz. In addition to that, you get 2 more for being an aquatic sheretz, a total of 4. The Gemara brings a right from here that fish are not gidulei karka. The Gemara wanted to say that all fish nibble off the ground, so therefore they're the gidulei karka. If so, they should get an additional 3 lavim for a total of 7 for being gidulei karka. So then what is the machlokes that we had yesterday in the brises? One brise is going to say that with Meiser Sheni money, you can purchase birds. In other words, you can buy chicken with Meiser Sheni money. Why? Because birds eat off the ground, they nourish from the ground. On the other hand, the other brise is going to say, no, you cannot buy birds, you can't buy chicken because they weren't created from the ground. Birds were created from rekak, which is like mud substance. So where lies the machlokes? And the Gemara tells us something very interesting. We're dealing here in Meiser Sheni with a pasuk that has a klal. It says you can buy anything with Meiser Sheni, then a prat, a limitation. Only bakar tzon yain sheichar, and then another klal you can buy anything. The machlokes is a klal prat or klal more similar to the 4th rule in the Shloishes Midas Shatter and Mem, or the 5th rule. The 4th rule tells us klal uprat. If the Torah is a generalization, says a generalization, then a specification, then it's very limiting. The Torah is explaining what the generalization is, and therefore it limits birds. You need to be similar in 3 things: gedulei karka, prima pri, and created from the ground. However, if we go and we say that klal uprat klal is similar to the 5th rule of Shloishes Midas, then it's a prat, a specification, a limitation, and afterwards a generalization. So it opens it up, it expands it, and said you could buy more things with Meiser Sheni, including birds and chicken. Rav Yehuda says you can make an eruv out of fapuim, out of gudgudarios, which are porcelain, and coriander. Even though coriander is not healthy to eat, especially for people that don't have children. So we're talking about people that have children, or that it hardened already and you have children. But the Gemara says even someone who doesn't have children perhaps may make an eruv with coriander. Why? Because it's a good food for somebody that has children. And we said that if you're a nazar, you can make an eruv out of wine, even though you yourself can't drink it. So too over here. Or perhaps we're talking about coriander, a different variety of it that comes from madai. The Gemara tells us, however, you cannot make an eruv out of unripened dates, and not with chazes, which is green grain. Now, the rule is that if there's a certain country or place that decided that we eat a certain food, but the rest of the world doesn't, and they have access to that food, but they don't consider it food, it's not considered food. Batla daitam etzel kaladam. For instance, if somebody plants barley, fenugreek, beans, not for the seed, but rather for the actual fruit of it, batla daitam. And therefore, potter from meiser. You take meiser from the seed part, but not from the vegetable part. However, rocket and cress, since there are many people that plant it for the vegetable, you have meiser on both. So why do Rav say that with chazes, which is a partial ripened grain, green grain, people don't really eat that? So why do he say you can make an eruv with it and the bracha is bar pri adama? And the answer is because we're talking about the variety, the garden variety. And the garden variety, everybody eats that as well. What could you do with the seed of a rocket? Why do you make a bracha on it? Because you could use it. If you ran out of pepper, you could crush the seed of rocket and use it as pepper. The Gemara tells us amazing thing. Reb Zera, he became so weak he couldn't learn Torah. The doctors told him, don't learn. But he wanted to be Mekayim Mitzvah. So he went to the house of Rav Yehuda Bar Ami, and he stood there by the doorway to see the Talmid Chachamim leave. And every time the Talmid Chacham would leave, he would stand up to be Mekayim the Mitzvah, standing up for Talmid Chacham. One of the people that came out was a small child. He said, tell me, child, what did you learn today? And he said, my Rebbe taught us that choice, hops, the bracha is bar pri adama, and chazes, the green grain, is shahakal. So he says, isn't it the opposite? Chazes is something that grows from the ground, should be hadama. Shais doesn't grow from the ground, he says. it grows on top of a bush. It should be shakal. The Gemara says, in fact, the child was right. Kshois is a finished pre. The fact that you say it doesn't grow from the ground, but it grows on a bush, and if you chop the bush from the bottom, the kshois will die. On the other hand, the chazes is not a finished pre, and therefore the bracha is shahakal. Kar, which is hearts of palm, it's edible, but later on in its life, it turns into wood. Can you purchase something that's going to turn into wood from Meiser Sheni money? And the Gemara says yes. However, since it turns into wood, it doesn't become tamei like regular food. Rabbi Yehuda says, in fact, it's considered wood. What's the nafkamina between Rabbi Yehuda and Tanna Kama? Rabbi Yehuda says the bracha is shahakal because it's like wood. Tanna Kama says, but right now it's edible. It's boyer pri adama. Shmuel tells Rav Yehuda, his famous Talmud, Shinano, you're such a sharp one. You know, the halach is like you, because snain, a turnip, also becomes hard later on. Yet, the bracha on turnip is ha'adama. The Gemara says, no, that's not a good right. Snain is harvest to eat it as is right now. But nobody harvests hearts of palm. You plant the palm tree for the dates, and just as a side benefit, you get the hearts of palm. The halacha of the Gemara says that hearts of palm, the bracha shahakal, although the poskim today say something else, maybe it's a different variety. But according to everybody, if you take the hearts of palm and you cook it or fry it, make a nice deep fried schnitzel out of the hearts of palm, it's considered food. You see, in fact, even if you take a piece of hide, which no one eats, but you cook it up, it's considered food. Now, if there's a date that's unripened, you could buy it with Meiser Sheni money and it's considered food. That's Mikabel Tuma. Rabbi Yehuda says it's part of Meiser. So if so, why can't you make an Eruv out of unripened dates, like we said before? The answer is because in order to make an Eruv, it has to be edible right now. And these dates, they're one step removed from eating. You have to roast them on the fire. We see a very similar idea by almonds. There's two varieties. There's the sweet and there's the bitter almond. The sweet almond, when it's small, it's chayv meiser. When it gets larger, it's patur from meiser because it's too bitter. The bitter dates, there are three shitas. According to Tanna Kama, the small ones are chayv meiser, the large ones are patur because they become bitter. According to Reb Shimon, they're both patur. And there's some that say that you're chayv meiser even in the larger variety, but it's not edible. The answer is you could roast it and then it becomes edible. So you see this idea. Have a wonderful day.